topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Trevor Loudon with us, the New Zealand author, researcher, speaker, and political activist. It's been Trevor who has been shouting from the timbers at least for a decade and a half that the socialists are coming. Well, guess what? They are no longer an existential threat. As Trevor's been saying, they've been living amongst us. They have bored down into institutions, including elected offices. And they came out loud and proud last night, Trevor.
They certainly did in New York across the state. Well, they basically won 3 congressional primaries. Mm-hmm. So there'll be 3 more of them in office probably after November, plus several state assembly seats, a state senate seat, and others around New York. But that's just capping off a whole run. They've won seats in Albuquerque and Los Angeles, Portland, Oregon, Minnesota, Detroit, you name it, all over the country. There's now hundreds of them in office around the country.
Right. I mean, think about that. Hundreds in office now and growing. And it's like we've got Mamdanis sprouting out all over the place. But not a big surprise for you. You've been warning us on that, like I said, at least for a decade and a half.
Yes, I have. And by the way, I didn't mention they also won the DC mayoralty and one DC council seat as well. But yes, a decade and a half. I've followed Democratic Socialist America for nearly 20 years now. Mm-hmm. And we need to understand this is just the latest iteration. It was the founder of DSA, a guy called Michael Harrington, who wrote the blueprint of the Great Society back in the 1960s that massively expanded welfare in this country and destroyed families all over the place under Lyndon Johnson. Was DSA through Quentin Young, Obama's personal physician who gave us Obamacare. It was DSA through Eliseo Medina that gave us illegal immigration amnesty, the push for illegal immigration amnesty. So what we see now is the damage they have done in the past, but this is going to be on steroids. They are really making a big push here to fully take over the Democratic Party and to basically destroy this country.
Well, they really have taken over the Democratic Party. You've got AOC, you got Bernie Sanders now that have put their stake into this party, and looks like they're going to have total control. And I think on one hand, in a strategic end, and I was discussing this with somebody else earlier, Trevor, is that the way they came in, it wasn't like they created a whole new party. They came in and overtook the Democratic Party. And so they present the illusion as if it is still a Democratic Party, but it's not. The Democratic Party and the Democratic Socialist Party are antithetical, are they not?
Well, look, the Democratic Party's been moving to the left, but the DSA is communist.
Yes.
They are a communist organization. This is a communist organization taking over the Socialist Democratic Party. So yeah, it's a big lurch to the left, and it's patchy around the country, but the main places: Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, Washington D.C. These are Boston. These are all heavily influenced by DSA now, plus many other centers. But the other thing is they control the union movement. They control groups like Indivisible. They control the US left, the Sunrise Movement, people like this, Working Families Party. This is all part of a whole. But the point we have to understand is these people are tied to the Chinese, the Cubans, and European and Latin American communists. This is part of an international movement to take down the United States.
Where else is this taking place besides the United States, Trevor?
Well, it's already taken place in Brazil. Brazil was a big model for this
Hmm.
under Lula, the Marxist. And it was Lula that set up the Sao Paulo Forum, a gathering of Latin American communist parties with Fidel Castro. Well,
Hmm.
DSA is now an associate member of that organization, which was specifically set up to recover for communism in Latin America what was lost in Eastern Europe.
Right.
So it's happening in Canada, it's happening in Australia, it's happening in the United States and in Britain, where the Communist Party is very strong in the British Labour Party, and a new pro-communist leader is just about to take over British Labour, a guy called Andy Burnham. So
Hmm.
this is happening in most of the Western countries, most of Western Europe, and all of the pretty much all of the Anglosphere except for New Zealand right now.
And it would seem that what is consistent in these areas that you've just cited, all dealing with immigration issues, all dealing with all kinds of ideas and not enough money.
Yeah, well, that's right. And you mentioned immigration. Immigration is the key weapon for destroying the conservative voting base
Hmm.
and all of the Anglosphere. The Australian Marxist leader Anthony Albanese, who now runs the place, he was elected by the Communist Party of China, essentially. The Communist Party of China called on Australian Chinese to vote for Albanese, and they won several key electorates for him. The
Hmm.
influence of China in Canada is extreme now. They are, dictating the outcomes of elections all over the place. And in places like California, the influence of Chinese is very strong, as in New York. Where you'll find DSA is very strong, you'll also find the Chinese are very strong. San
Hmm.
Francisco, Los Angeles, New York, Boston, these go together hand in hand.
Hmm.
But we got to understand DSA is an agency of foreign powers. It is a tool of the Chinese and foreign communists.
Hmm.
And one of the main way this is playing out right now is that DSA is leading the charge against data centers all over the United States. Big AI centers.
Yeah, right.
And I
Exactly.
understand people's concerns about these. People are concerned about their privacy. They're concerned about resources being used up. But the battle to shut these down is being led by DSA, because DSA is doing this on behalf of the Chinese,
Exactly.
because the war for the 21st century and the next century is going to be fought on AI. And Trump
Hmm.
has made it very clear America has to win this. And if we
Right.
don't win it, China will, and they will
Right.
dominate the planet. So DSA is out there right now trying to retard America's development of AI as much as it possibly can, because they are working for the enemy.
Yeah, exactly. People may think, well, I'm not seeing a lot of Chinese around. How are they able to leverage so much influence and power? We see what they've done in media, in sports, and other areas. But I say, look at the example of what happened in Minneapolis. You've got 80,000 Somalis there, Trevor, that have basically taken over that city and ultimately the state.
Yeah.
80,000 is a voting block. So it doesn't take a lot of people in order to wield this kind of influence and power, does it?
No, it doesn't. Well, look, in San Francisco, they have a group called the Chinese Progressive Association,
Hmm.
which works as the agency for the Chinese Communist Party. But you cannot get elected to the San Francisco City Council without the blessing of the Chinese Progressive Association. Now, they have expanded that influence that they started in San Francisco into Sacramento, into LA, and also into Washington, D.C., through Nancy Pelosi and many other people, and
Right.
Gavin Newsom, of course. But the Chinese Progressive Association also runs major voter registration organizations in all of the key swing states through a group they started called Seed the Vote. They also started Black Lives Matter too, by the way.
Mhm.
But this
Yes.
Seed the Vote claims they won 6 of the 7 states they targeted in 2020 for Biden Harris. and they did. So
Wow.
there's an example, and Seed the Vote is staffed largely by Democratic Socialists of America members, but it's a
Exactly.
Chinese operation.
We're talking with Trevor Loudon, the New Zealand author, researcher, speaker, and political activist. Yeah, I mean, they're bringing in the numbers. It's concentrated, it's focused, and they're overwhelming this Democratic Republic. So what should be the strategy of fair-minded Americans who are looking at the 250th anniversary, less than 2 weeks away? And we're realizing the warning of one Ronald Reagan that said that democracy is we're one generation from losing, our liberties and our democracy.
Well, look, it's going to take our action, grassroots people getting behind, making sure that the Democrats are defeated in the midterm elections. That's
Mhm.
essential because if they win and they win the presidency, the illegal immigration pipeline starts all up again, the borders fly open again, more Muslim immigration in America's finished. It's
Yeah.
gone. But it's also going to take federal action. Now, I just noted that one of the leader of the Antifa group that attacked an ICE facility in Texas some time ago just got 100 years jail. 100
Mm.
years jail, or his co-conspirators got between 30 and 50-year terms. We got to get serious about going after DSA for their illegal activities, for their work for foreign powers, and we got to start prosecuting these people. This is the modern Communist Party. And we know
Right.
the Communist Party worked for the Soviet Union. They had 400 agents in the Roosevelt administration who did all sorts of sabotage on this country, set up the United Nations, got us into the World Monetary Fund, all this kind of garbage that we're still suffering from today.
Mm.
Um, these people are actively committing treason against the United States, and we need to be setting up hearings to investigate these people and treat them as the foreign-backed communists that they are. So it's the local people have got to defend their own turf. They've got to get educated on DSA. They've got to make sure these people don't get elected. But we do need federal action. We need to treat this as a national security threat, which it is.
Well, I think some of the inherent problem for the masses is, Trevor, they don't understand democratic socialist. It sounds it's it just sounds, well, it's, like it's Democratic Party related, and they're confused. They don't get it. I mean, it's almost like we need to retitle the DSA to the Democratic Communists
Yeah,
Party.
yeah, we need to brand them as look, they say it themselves that they are communists.
Right.
The difference between democratic socialism and communism is essentially 3 to 5 years.
Hmm. Yes.
That's what
Right.
it is.
Right.
And look, they have cross membership with the Communist Party USA and Liberation Road, the Freedom Road Socialist Organization. They have several communist groups operating within in their ranks. They have a communist caucus. One of their co-leaders is a member of that. As I've said, they work with Brazilian communists, European communists, Chinese communists. They have very deep connections to the Cuban communists now,
Hmm.
very deep, and the
Yeah.
Venezuelan communists as well. All enemies of America they work with. So we need to be going after these people and prosecuting them as as unregistered agents of foreign powers, for espionage, for subversion. One of their members served 17 years in jail for spying for the Soviet Union in East Germany, was prosecuted in the 90s, got out of jail, straight back into DSA. Now he's a leader of their Washington, D.C. branch. They took him straight back. A
Wow.
convicted traitor who sold military secrets to our enemies was welcomed back into DSA. A guy called Kurt Stand.
Hmm.
Him and his wife and his buddy, three of them, all got prosecuted, all got 15 to 21 years jail. But Kurt Stan was allowed straight back in, as was his daughter. She's in DSA as well.
Yeah, the character of these people is so noted. Even Mike Johnson was speaking about it in saying that you've got the one Bang in California refuses to say the Pledge of Allegiance. You've
Yeah.
got Hemingway out of New Jersey, ties to Al Qaeda and other terrorists. Chevalier wants to abolish the border. Mendoza out of Arizona decriminalized trans prostitution, whatever that is. Um, James in Iowa wants to apologize for being white, and Garriott in Iowa performed a Satanist wedding. These are anti-American people. And this is what we've been saying on the show is that you need to look at it through the prism of either they're pro-American or they anti-American. And the good news is, here for many years, like you say, almost 20 years, Trevor, you've been yelling from the timbers about democratic socialists that were in our government, but they kept themselves in the closet. Now, because of Mamdani, I guess we can be, grateful for Mamdani getting elected in New York. They're loud and proud and they're out of the closet full blown.
Well, absolutely, though. They got 4 members on the LA City Council, 4 on the Portland, Oregon City Council, hundreds of state legislators, reps, school board members, several members in Congress. They should have up to maybe 8 to 10 members of Congress in the next session. Probably Cory Bush out in Missouri, May Vang, who you just mentioned, out in Sacramento, who wouldn't support America. They're talking about their new policy has just come out: abolish the Senate, abolish the presidency, make Puerto Rico a state, make Washington D.C. a state. Why make Puerto Rico and Washington D.C. a state? Because that's 2 more left-wing senators from each one,
Right.
which will give the Democrats, which are controlled by DSA, an unassailable majority. So, they're playing a very long strategic game, but the point I keep on emphasizing is they are foreign backed. They are foreign agents. This is not just an American phenomenon. This is an
Yeah.
international communist phenomenon.
And people need to understand, if you want to know what somebody's going to do, look what they've done. And the socialists are not concerned about the individual. This is why Karen Bass could care less what's happening in LA with people that are suffering still without homes and may never get a home again, because she's a socialist. She's siding with this group of people. But that's their nature. It's not about the people. It's about power and control. It's about their infrastructure, right?
Exactly. It's all about passive. Mandami right now is stacking the New York City government with hundreds of his people. So even if he's not the mayor, the next
Mayor.
mayor will have the same thing. See, David Dinkins back in the early 90s was also a DSA member. And under Dinkins, he didn't enforce the laws. The streets were filthy. Times Square was full of prostitutes and drug addicts, and the tourists stayed away. That was New York's lowest point under a DSA mayor. And Giuliani had to come in to fix it up. But
Right.
look, Mandami is 10 times worse than Dinkins. This
Right.
is way, way bigger now. Back in those days, DSA was 6,000 members. Now it's 100,000 members.
Wow.
In Los Angeles, you mentioned Karen Bass, very deeply tied to the Cubans, a former Maoist, a former DSA supporter herself, and her main opponent is Nithya Raman, who is a DSA member. So you got communist versus socialist. Well, you really got 2 communists on the ballot.
Right. Exactly.
Daryl Gates, who was the mayor of Los Angeles years, the police chief, a very good one, accused Karen Bass of running Cuban weapons to Los Angeles gangs back in the day. And now the woman is mayor. Can you believe it? But the media is so weak and so compliant that the voters never hear this kind of stuff. And
Well,
we
the
saw it
voters
had a
need to
little.
mount up and wake up here, Trevor. That's the call, right?
It is, and Spencer Pratt was loudly talking about DSA in his campaign against Karen Bass, but 9 points ahead in election night, and now he's out of the race
Yeah.
because of the ballots that came in. This is what takes federal action. You cannot clean up the vote fraud. You cannot clean up the corruption. You cannot clean up the socialism from California or from Illinois, you've got to do this federally. This is a federal problem, and only the feds can fix this.
Exactly. Well, he's a New Zealand author, researcher, speaker, and political activist. Trevor, as always, appreciate the time. Thank you for being with us. Take care. Godspeed, my friend.
You're most welcome, Bill. Thank you very much.
The American Minute creator, the one and only Bill Federer. Hey, Mr. Bill, how we doing?
Great to be with you, Bill.
Well, happy 4th of July, my friend.
Well, it is a monumental holiday where we celebrate our independence from Britain. One of the things I highlight is that Britain was the most powerful empire on the planet. The King of England was a globalist. He was a one world government guy. The sun never set in the British Empire. He had India, Australia, New Zealand, Hong Kong, British Guyana, Canada, Barbados, Bermuda, Jamaica, and America. And America's founders decided they didn't like a globalist king telling us what to do, so they broke away and flipped it and made the people the king. So monarchies have kings and republics have citizens. And the king has subjects who are subjected to his will. And the word citizen means co-ruler, co-sovereign, co-king. So our founders, for all their faults, they gave us a present. And that present is you get to be in charge of your life, and all of us together are in charge of the country. And we have a voluntary opportunity of surrendering our lives to Jesus, the King of Kings. But it's voluntary. They fled from Europe where it was mandatory, and they wanted freedom of conscience. God loves you. He wants you to love him back. But for love to be loved, it must be voluntary.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because here it's almost like we've gone full circle, Bill, because 250 years we're celebrating, this holiday. We rejected a globalist movement. And but the thing is about the globalist movement is that like cockroaches, it just keeps reinventing itself, and it just never, ever just goes away, does it?
Yeah, it's like weeds in your yard. What do you have to do to get weeds? Nothing. You just do nothing and they automatically appear. And what takes effort to weed your yard. So the saying is eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. So every generation has to be eternally, you have to get out there and weed the yard every single, day or week. And I like looking at history. Several years ago, I decided I'd research every century of recorded human history. I know I've talked about this before, but the most common form of government is kings. And the first record of this in the Bible is Nimrod Tower of Babel, just down the mountain from Ararat when Noah's Ark landed.
Yes.
And Josephus, the Jewish commentator, said Nimrod wanted to build his tower so high that if God destroyed the world again with a flood, he could survive on top. And he made everybody in town bake bricks or he would kill them. He wanted people to fear him more than God. And since the population of the world was centered there, the Fertile Crescent, the Mesopotamian Valley, just down the mountain from Ararat, and he wanted to control it, in a sense, he was the first globalist. Nimrod was the first one that wanted to control the human population. And God comes down, confuses the languages, and the people scatter into language groups that turn into nations. So in a sense, nations were God's invention to postpone a one world government. But every generation has some king that wants to conquer other nations. And if left unchecked, we'd have been happy to conquer them all. And, you got Caesar and Attila the Hun and Genghis Khan. But at the time of America's founding, it was the King of England. And so America's founders broke away and gave us a republic where we get to be in charge of our lives and all of us together are in charge of the country.
Well, getting back to what you said earlier about, maintaining the garden and getting the weeds out of there. I mean, little did we know when Benjamin Franklin responded to that woman asking him after the Continental Convention, okay, so what kind of government did you guys come up with? He said, well, a republic if you can keep it. Maybe he needed to explain a little bit more what that meant, right?
Yeah, well, John Adams wrote the Constitution for Massachusetts in 1780, 7 years before the U.S. Constitution. So Massachusetts is considered the longest still in use Constitution in world history. But when John Adams wrote it, he realized that if we're not going to be a country ruled by a king who uses fear, we're going to be a republic where the citizens need to be moral. And so John Adams put into the Massachusetts Constitution that the state shall lay a tax for the support and maintenance of public Protestant teachers of piety and religion. He says, we've got to have a moral populace, and so it's to the state's interest that we teach Protestant Christianity.
Right.
Right. And so what does that teach? It teaches that God is a God of laws, and he's watching you, and he wants you to be fair. And if there is no God, then it's whatever you can get away with.
Well, of course, exactly.
And laws are just made up by some men. It's like, why follow them? And it turns into lawlessness.
Mm-hmm. How did this not collide with the idea or this concept that has been popularized these days, the idea of separation of church and state?
Yeah. So every colony was started by a different Christian denomination. Mm-hmm. Virginia was Anglican, Massachusetts was Puritan, Rhode Island was Baptist, Maryland Catholic, New York Dutch Reformed, Delaware, New Jersey Swedish Lutheran, and Pennsylvania Quaker, and they did not get along. If you read the history, if any one of them thought they could have defeated the king on their own, they would have been tempted to set up their own denomination as the national one. But for God's purpose, they needed each other. Yes. And so at the Constitutional Convention, the First Continental Congress in September of 1774, a motion was made to open with prayer. And the delegate Rutledge from South Carolina and Jay from New York objected. And John Adams writes that we could not join together in the same act of religious worship because we were divided in our religious sentiments. And Sam Adams stands up. He goes, I'm no bigot. I can hear a prayer of any man of piety who at the same time is a friend and a patriot of our nation. Mm-hmm. And so they prayed together, and God blessed us with independence. Now, their fear was that the new federal government would pick one Christian denomination and make it the national one, which is what every country in Europe did.
Right.
England was Anglican, Scotland was Presbyterian, Holland was Dutch Reformed, Germany was Lutheran, Switzerland, Italy Catholic, and Greece was Greek Orthodox. And it was one denomination per country. And so we're setting up a new country. Their only frame of reference is, okay, we're going to pick one denomination. And they didn't always agree. So they decided that they would put handcuffs on the federal government, called the first 10 amendments. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. Respecting means neither for nor against. It means concerning. And so when the subject of religion comes before the federal government, they're supposed to throw their hands up and say, we have no jurisdiction. Religion is left under the state constitutions. And that's what Joseph Story said, the first Chief Justice. The whole power over the subject of religion is left exclusively to state constitutions. And so I read through every state constitution. In 1776, 9 of the original state constitutions required office holders to be Protestant. I mean, even South Carolina specifically said the Christian Protestant religion is hereby deemed the established religion of the state. It's like, wow. Okay. And then you had 3 states that were liberal, like Delaware's state constitution, 1776, said every office holder had to believe in God the Father, Jesus Christ, his only Son, the Holy Ghost, one God, bless forevermore. And you think that's pretty narrow-minded. No, that was generous, because you could be Catholic or Protestant and say, I believe in Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. Ben Franklin signed Pennsylvania's constitution that said every office holder had to believe in God, creator and governor of the universe, and acknowledge the scriptures of the Old and New Testament to be given by divine inspiration. In other words, you not only had to lay your hand on the scriptures, you had to swear you believed in them. Mm-hmm. And that was liberal, because you could be a Catholic or a Protestant and say, I believe in the divine inspiration of the scriptures. Interestingly, one state had 0 religious requirements, the most evangelical, Rhode Island, founded by Baptists. They said if you required someone to be a Christian to get elected, they could say they were, even if they weren't, just to get elected, and that would be hypocritical. So just vote for the best Christian person you know.
Right, exactly. We're talking with Bill Federer. He's the American Minute Creator, as we come together to celebrate our nation's 250th anniversary. What a grand day for an exceptional country that still, by all measure, Bill Federer, is the greatest country on God's green earth, right?
Yeah, if I were to sum up America in one word, it would be individual. That you have a worth because you individually are made in the image of the Creator, and He is not a respecter of persons, so all of us individuals are equal. It's different. All the rest of the world, your worth is not because you're made in the image of the Creator, it's what class you were born into. So if you're in a Muslim country and you're a Muslim male, you are worth more than a Muslim female. Even
Exactly.
Muhammad said that it takes two women to testify in court against one man because a woman's mind is deficient. If you're in a Hindu country, if you're a Brahmin in the highest caste, you're worth more than an untouchable Dalits in the lowest caste. You got to carry out dead bodies and clean the sewers. If you're in an atheistic country, your worth is dependent on your utility to the state. If you can contribute to the Communist Party, you're worth more. If you're not, they'll harvest your organs and sell you. But in America, you're worth something, not because you're a Muslim male, not because you're useful to the state, not because you're a Brahmin. You're worth something because you're made in the image of God.
Exactly.
And that's what John F. Kennedy said in his inaugural address. We believe that all men are created equal because we're created in the image of God. In Islam, Allah has no image, right? This is a Bible idea. And God is singular. So we're not talking Hinduism or Buddhism, right? And then Harry S. Truman's inaugural address. He said, we believe Kennedy said the rights of man come not from the generosity of the state, but from the hand of God. So that's Kennedy. And Harry S. Truman, 1949, said, we believe all men are created equal because we're created in the image of God. So we got a Truman quote and a Kennedy quote, but they're both from their inaugural addresses. They're Democrat presidents. They're acknowledging God. They're acknowledging the uniqueness of America compared to the other countries of the world.
Well, going back to the early founding, you mentioned John Adams. John Adams, declared that our Constitution was designed for a moral people. Well, what's your morality based on, Bill, if it isn't Scripture?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's the God of the Bible. The Greeks had a democracy, but they had a bunch of fickle deities, Zeus and Hera, and Aphrodite. How can you be accountable to Aphrodite, the goddess of love, when her temple has temple prostitutes? There's no concept of a just God. It's these fickle gods that you have to appease all the time. The God of the Bible is just, and he's watching you, and he wants you to be fair. And God knew they would sin, so once a year they had the Day of Atonement, and they would sacrifice and sprinkle the blood of the lamb on the mercy seat, and everyone's sins were forgiven. And that's foreshadowing Jesus. He's our atonement, not just for the last year, but for all of our lives and all eternity. But the Bible God is a just God, and that's key. And then one of the Bible principles in our Constitution is we're sinners. And that's sort of overlooked. Oh, the Constitution doesn't mention God. Well, it does where it says done in the year of our Lord. But it's based on a principle that we humans are fallen creatures, right? Original sin. And as such, we're selfish. And even if you have a good person and he's in office, he's going to be tempted to favor his family and friends over his political enemies. And it gets discretionary. So the founders had this idea, let's take the power of ruling, break it into three branches, executive, legislative, judicial, and let's pit them against each other in a three-way tug of war. So the executive branch would always try to pull power away from the legislative and judicial. And the judicial branch would always try to pull power away from the executive and legislative, and vice versa. It's a three-way tug of war. It's actually brilliant. It's like giving a Sunday school assignment where sinners keep other sinners from sinning, right? Design a system of government where sinners will keep other sinners from sinning. That's what our Constitution is, because we don't have any angels on earth to govern us, was what James Madison said. All we got is us fallen creatures, and so it's pitting the selfishness against each other. And it worked. Then we separated power federal to state level. Our founders basically took the Tower of Babel and scattered it. They took the power of a concentrated rule and they separated it intentionally. They actually designed a government to work inefficient on purpose, slow to making good decisions, but thank God, slow to making irreversible bad decisions.
Right.
They realized it could take a lifetime to build a mansion and one irresponsible match to burn the thing down in a day.
Exactly. Well, Bill, you think about going back to what you were talking about, the individualism that was foreseen by our founders, that they got that and what that meant in terms of the power of the individual. And when consider, here we're what, 350 population, the collaborative intelligence of 350 million people as individuals. I mean, that is a lot of power, and that's what has thrust America to this greatness that it has become. If America was socialistic and siloed, everybody would have been dumbed down. We'd have been a nation of mediocrity, wouldn't we?
Yeah. It's interesting. I wrote a book on socialism, and we're a government from the consent of the governed. But what if you could engineer consent of the governed?
Right.
And so Edward Bernays, who was a marketing pioneer, wrote a book called The Engineering of Consent. And he talks, his uncle was Sigmund Freud, who studied group psychology and found out that we want to be accepted in a group and we fear being rejected by a group. And so all marketing is based on that. I mean, the whole fashion industry. We wear something because, hey, we'll be accepted, and we don't want to look stupid and foolish, and we won't wear that. And so he would use advertisements that would just, like Keeping Up with the Joneses. They would make it look like everybody's using a product or wearing a certain thing. It's like, oh, I want it, even though you don't do your own research. And even Joseph Goebbels studied Edward Bernays and said people will do what they see other people doing. So he's actually not minister of propaganda for the Nazis. He would fill a stadium with 100,000 people, and they would give the Hitler salute in the front, and it would work its way back. And 100,000 people, like a wave at a football game, and it's getting closer to you, you'd feel pressured to give it. And then people would say, you giving it? And they'd feel pressured to give it. And everybody would leave the stadium saying, well, I guess everybody's in on this Nazi stuff because I saw them all. It was a manipulation of your perception of what everybody else believed and was, but even if they didn't. So now it's all done online. And that's why they want to censor views on the internet and magnify other views, because they want to make the impression that everybody's going along with this. And subconsciously, you don't want to be left out.
And the fear of missing out, right?
Yeah. And then with AI, they can have a deception designed just for you. They can personalize it. So every interaction you do with the internet, it is building a profile on you and learning your pleasures, your pains, your fears and your desires. And then it can gradually, the University of Zurich did a study that AI bots are 6 times more effective at getting people to change their opinions than humans are.
Wow.
Right? And so we're government from the consent of the governed, but if somebody is controlling all that apparatus, as psychological operation, they can help engineer the consent of the governed.
Exactly. And there's so many things coming at you that affect that aspect, that matrix right there, the consent of the government, whether it's ballot stuffing, AI, and all this manipulation that's going on in the power of the information age in which we live in, Bill.
Yeah, they say that within a few years, passwords will be useless, that the AI will be able to crack everything and know all information about everybody. It's called AGI, Artificial General Intelligence. And Elon Musk says we have 5 years. In other words, the collective internet will know all of human knowledge at once.
Maybe we'll find out who really killed JFK.
Yeah.
Maybe, huh, Bill? Hey, Bill, we got to wrap things up. We know that today, the 4th of July, our founders said, John Adams envisioned fireworks and celebrations and everything. And here we are, 250 years, and the celebrations, the fireworks, the picnics and everything are as Americana as red, white, and blue, right?
Yeah, well, King George was 38 years old when we fought the Revolutionary War. Most of the founders were young men. Thomas Jefferson was 33 years old when he penned the Declaration of Independence. Out of the 56 signers, 11 had their homes destroyed, 5 were hunted down and captured, 17 served in the military, 9 died in the war. One of the youngest signers, George Walton, was 27 years old when he signed the Declaration. He was captured and wounded. Edward Rutledge was 27, and Thomas Hayward was 30, and all these young guys. Thomas Nelson was 38, but they were willing to sacrifice their prosperity for their posterity.
Right.
And so many today are doing the opposite, sacrificing our posterity with prosperity, saddling our kids with a $40 trillion debt. But every generation, it's the price of liberty's eternal vigilance. What are the stories we love best? It's when things look hopeless and God raises up little nobodies with faith and courage. And whether it's a Gideon, a David, or a George Washington, or a Patrick Henry, or a Thomas Jefferson, this is just our turn.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Bill Federer, as always, appreciate you. Remind everybody, if they want to subscribe to the American Minute, how they can do that.
Oh, thank you. My website's AmericanMinute.com, AmericanMinute.com, and would love to be in touch with everyone.
Happy 4th of July, my friend.
Happy 4th to you, Bill, and all the viewers and listeners.